Coming into the offseason, I thought to myself, yeah, Teoscar, he could absolutely go back. Why fix what's not broke? He had a couple of years of regression. He's with the Mariners before going to the Dodgers, right? And, the numbers were dipping. He went to the Dodgers and they got something figured out with him. Maybe there was a bit of motivation on his end as well to get things going. And this guy had an incredible year, a great season overall, won the home run derby, winning the World Series with the Dodgers. He said after that he wanted to go back 1,000%. In the end for me, though, over all the years that I've paid attention to the offseason, all these rumors, all of the little tidbits that you get out there, all the little golden nuggets that you get out there, I think to myself, words are words. In the end, money is money, and that's going to be the biggest factor in the end. And it seemed like, in the end, the Dodgers were the only ones out there to really want to give him what he wanted, right? In the end, you saw a few teams in on the mix, right? The Red Sox were a team mentioned a lot. Even go back to the beginning of the offseason when Juan Soto was still a free agent. People were thinking, oh, okay, well, if Juan Soto goes elsewhere, he could be an option for the Yankees. Didn't happen, right? You saw the Phillies get, poked around a little bit. The Orioles were a team that popped up a little bit. But really, it seemed like out of all the reports we were getting, maybe the Blue Jays possibly threw a ticket in at the last second, but it really seemed like from the word go, the Dodgers were the only team that really showed serious interest in having a reunion with him, right? And again, he thought maybe the Red Sox could be a team because they needed a right-handed hitter. They negotiated with him last offseason. And in the end, I think if you're the Red Sox, you're thinking to yourself, you had your shot at this guy last year. He would have absolutely gone. He would have gone to Boston. He would have done it. If they had just given a bit more money, you could have had this guy cheaper than what he ended up getting with the Dodgers, most likely. So in the end, this is great for the Dodgers. It's good for the fan base. The Dodger fans really grew to Teoscar this year, and why would you not? He had an incredible year. And hey, this Dodgers lineup, it's looking just as good as it was last year. You also brought in Michael Conforto. This was a guy where you brought him in, and I was thinking to myself, okay, does this close the window on Teoscar a little bit? I thought to myself, yes, you could still bring him back, but really when you look back on it in hindsight, the Conforto move was more of an insurance policy for them. If Teoscar ended up going elsewhere, at least you brought in Michael Conforto, right? Yes, you would rather have Teoscar, but now they have both. So the question is here, what happens with the mix when it comes to the outfield, right? You got Teoscar out in right field, left field, whatever it may be. Conforto in left field projected as of right now. Tommy Edman is projected for center field. What does this mean for Andy Pages now, right? Does Andy Pages kind of work his way into the mix? Could you maybe, I don't think this happens because Pages is a talented young outfielder, but could you maybe see some kind of a trade at some point? I feel like they would probably like to hang on to Andy Pages, but you got to think with Conforto, he's on a 2-year deal here. Now Teoscar is going to be on a 3-year deal. Edman, the good thing with him is he does have some versatility. So what you could see if you were to work in Pages into the mix full time is if you could have Edman possibly play one of the middle infield positions with Mookie. That would kind of push Gavin Lux out of the mix for a starting job. And then Pages can just be your center fielder. So, and then I see you in the chat here. Jingzhou star Outman. James Outman had a really tough year this past year. Does he work himself back into the mix in some way? Or is he really just depth at this point? Is he really just a fourth outfielder after a great rookie season a couple of years ago? So it's going to be interesting to see how, the outfield mix works itself out. But in the end, it's great for Teoscar. It's great for the Dodgers. You still got a lot of firepower left on this team to go after another World Series this coming year. This team is loaded, right? And adding Teoscar back into the mix, it's a win for everybody. You can't complain about it. It works for everyone. Dodger fans are happy, And really what I also like about it too, it's not, sure, you like having Teoscar in the mix, but it's a 3-year deal. Right? Teams love 3-year deals, man. Like, that's a good sweet spot for a lot of teams because you're not getting locked into this long-term deal, like you're going to get locked in. Yes, Juan Soto is going to be great for the near future, but the back half of the deal, you wonder, okay, how's he going to be in the final 5 years of that deal? But then you look at guys like Alex Bregman. We'll talk about him in a little bit, right? You're going to have to probably give him something, 7 years, at least in that range. Teams always want to try and avoid that, right? With Teoscar, I just think it's a win-win all the way around. No one loses in this situation, right? It's good for the Dodgers, both in terms of the player and the financial part of it. You're not getting locked down to a long-term deal, 3 years, solid. Can't go wrong with it. The only question mark really is how does the mix work out? But for the Dodgers, they love having their depth. They love having the flexibility. This is a great move all the way around, right? I really enjoy this for the Dodgers. Teoscar, for the Red Sox, that was a big target coming into the offseason. The Red Sox looking for a right-handed bat. But in the end, hey, he loved his time there. And I don't blame the guy. I don't either. Even coming into the offseason, too, when I was coming up with my predictions, I was like, do I want to, go with Teoscar as a Red Sox for next year? Because I always think to myself, I feel like this happens more often than not. When there's an opportunity for something to happen and then it doesn't end up happening, I feel like every time you always try to revisit talks like that, it tends to just not happen more often than not, So in the end, no complaints anywhere around here. What's next for the Dodgers, right? What's next? Well, really, it's like you're already just so set everywhere. Maybe you could add something else to the bullpen. You've already brought back Blake Trinan at this point. I don't know. You got young guys coming back. You got Gonsolin coming back for the rotation. Dustin May. What else do you do? I feel like there's not really much left. I feel like you could maybe add something for the bullpen. Could you make another splash? Could it be Tanner Scott? We'll see. But really, thank you, Danielle. That was the next one I was going to get to. Really, I think the one guy that everyone's going to be looking to for the Dodgers is Roki Sasaki at this point. I don't really count Sasaki in that, free agent mix. He's kind of in his own world at this point. It's kind of like the Juan Soto sweepstakes. There are only a select amount of teams involved there. With Roki, it's even more different, right, than just any other free agent, even Soto, because really he's a prospect going on a recruiting tour at this point. It's not even free agency. So that's really the big one left for the Dodgers, in my opinion. Maybe they could add something for the bullpen, right? But all eyes are going to turn to Roki now. And the Dodgers absolutely are going to have a shot for him. Why wouldn't they, right? All the boxes are getting checked off. You got Shohei Ohtani. You got Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Tons of talent all over the place. Great player development. The only thing I could see that holds the Dodgers back, and it's nothing that they do wrong necessarily, it's more, what is the preference going to be for Sasaki? In the end, money is not a factor here, So that's not going to be the sticking point. It's really going to come down to preference. Yes, there's a lot of good reasons for the Dodgers to be a good fit for him, right? And to, check off boxes for him. But it really just depends, what is the environment that he's going to be looking for, right? If you go to the Dodgers, you are going to be going to a great organization. But if he wants something maybe that's going to be a little more on the quiet side at this point in his career, then you could maybe see the Padres possibly, or maybe a smaller market, right? It's going to come down to just what does he, kind of like Ohtani, right? You think back with Ohtani, who thought he was going to go to the Angels? No one thought he was going to go to the Angels, right? You had so many other teams that came in the mix, right? You had the Cubs, the Yankees, but then it kind of started going more towards the West Coast. A lot of people were big on the Dodgers, right? But then, it was kind of where he wanted to be a DH, so it didn't really work for the Dodgers at the time because he didn't have the DH. A lot of people were thinking the Giants, for, Shohei Ohtani as well. But again, it was kind of like the DH thing, right? So the Angels, coming into it, no one was really thinking of them. And then in the end, they kind of just ended up being the perfect situation at that time. What will be the perfect situation for Roki at this time, right? It's different than Ohtani, of course, because there's no bat involved. But we'll see. We'll talk more about Roki in just a little bit, but that will be the next item for the Dodgers here. So we got 500 people in this chat. Everyone, we are trying to get to at least 200 likes. We're already halfway there. And also, I forgot to say coming into here, we started off hot. We were just getting the ball rolling right off the bat. I hope everyone had a great Christmas, great holiday, whatever it is that you do over on your end. I hope you enjoyed it with your family, friends. I hope Santa Claus brought some nice things for you. Hey, good day for me. It was a pretty quiet day for me on Christmas. Nothing too crazy. At this point in my life, I don't really care about the gifts too much. They're nice, but I'm really kind of one of those guys where I'm like, hey, if I get some socks, I'm okay with that because I need those, right? Deodorant, perfect. That's exactly what I need, right? I care more about the food on the holidays now. The good desserts. I get excited about that stuff, ladies and gentlemen. I did get this ring though. This little Aura ring. I don't know if anyone has one of these out there. These things are pretty nifty, I gotta say. Pretty nifty. It keeps track of like my sleep and my steps and everything. I've never worn a ring, so it's kind of weird, but kind of neat. But again, hope everyone had a great Christmas. But let's get to it, everyone. Let's get to it. Moving on. Let's get to Gleyber Torres. Gleyber Torres. I'm going to be honest. This one kind of threw me off a little bit. I didn't see this one coming, right? We had seen Bregman with the Tigers, and then this one happened today. So I was like, huh? Okay, so there's a lot of questions here, right? A lot of questions. Gleyber Torres, 1 year, $15 million deal. Kind of what I expected. Pretty much what I expected with Gleyber. A 1 year deal. He did do very well in the leadoff spot this year after Aaron Boone put him there. But other than that, outside of that, it was not a great year for Gleyber. A couple of years ago, he had a very good year, right? 25 homers. Gleyber, this is kind of one of those guys where he can give you a pretty solid right-handed bat, but when it comes to him in the infield, you see the word lazy a lot with Gleyber, right? You see a lot of people use that word with him when it comes to the fielding, when it comes to the base running. I still remember, even in the postseason, I remember there was a double play for Gleyber. It was just the way he turned it. It was like you were watching it in slow motion, and as it was happening, you're thinking, oh, the runner's going to beat this out, right? And then the runner beat it out. And then I think it led to some runs. I can't remember the situation exactly. Was it the World Series? I can't remember. I'm going blank. But that's pretty much what you're going to get with Gleyber. There were some talks about him maybe possibly manning third base for a couple of teams out there. The Nationals and the Angels were showing interest at third base for him. But in the end, hey, he didn't want to play third base. Remember, the Yankees wanted him to play third base. And that didn't happen, all right? Jazz Chisholm ended up playing third. So for the Tigers, this is very interesting because, again, we'll talk about Bregman in just a second here, but you're thinking with the Tigers already. Yes, Bregman, that's kind of one of those guys where, yeah, that's one of the top free agents. I mean, that makes sense if someone has to get pushed off to the side a little bit. You make the exception for Mr. Bregman. No one's going to be getting blocked, right? Bregman is Bregman. But Gleyber, at the time when I first saw it, my first reaction was, is this a pivot, right? You see this kind of stuff all the time. Said team is in on big free agent, and then all of a sudden they sign someone similar position, or at least, in this case, right, Bregman third base, can play second base, but then you just go with a second baseman and Gleyber Torres. The difference here with the Tigers is they already have guys that can man these positions, right? Before you had Colt Keith, who was going to be the second baseman. Now he's going to be moved over to first. So what happens with Spencer Torkelson at this point? But then when you think of a possible next move, you saw some reports out there saying, well, okay, the Tigers are still in on Alex Bregman. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, like obviously you can still do it. But at this point, Jace Young, what you could have done before is maybe you could have moved Jace Young over to second. Colt Keith could have moved to first, and then you figure it out with Torkelson, right? But now it's even more complicated. So Jace Young, where is he going to go? I mean, is he going to be a guy that has is a bit of a utility-ish kind of a player where he can play some third, maybe some outfield? And even looking at Trey Sweeney, right? Javier Baez is on a big contract. Is Javier Baez going to be a bench guy? I don't know. So you have a lot of guys here in this lineup that are taking up spots. And I just wonder, is Bregman going to be a move here? It could happen. I'm not saying it can't, but it just feels like you have a lot of guys. And now adding Bregman along with this, at the end of the day, sure, Bregman is, he's going to be a better option than Jace Young at this point. But at the end of the day, you have a lot of players that are looking for playing time. So does Jace Young just go back to AAA for the entire year? I feel like at this point, you would like for him to maybe start getting some major league at-bats, right? You got to look at the player development side of it too. I don't know. I just feel personally with this, it's going to be a little difficult to work Bregman into the mix, but you never know. Now, the Tigers, right, from their point of view, GM, he was talking, and he was saying, can't talk about specific free agents at this point, but he said, they're always trying to improve the club. And the last thing he said was, he likes where the team is. That kind of makes me think they're probably set here when it comes to the lineup, but you never know. Maybe this could be a thing where the Dodgers, right? The Dodgers, they brought in Michael Conforto. We just talked about this a second ago. Could this be a move from their point of view, where, okay, we'll bring in Gleyber. That way we have insurance. We're making sure we're set if Bregman ends up going elsewhere, but we would still like him to be here, right? So is this a Conforto, Teoscar, Hernández situation? Or is this like, okay, they're moving on here, right? A bit of a difference with those two situations is the Tigers, they got a couple more players that are in the mix here, right? With the Dodgers, you could have made it work without Teoscar, but even if you bring him in, you still make it work. And then, Pages, you can still work him out to center field. Edman can move into the infield. So the Dodgers, they had a bit more flexibility here. I feel like the Tigers don't as much, but really just comes down to, is Bregman going to be the guy that, yes, he would be at third base if you brought him in, but it's just, what do you do with Jace Young at that point, right? Could you move him? He has value. If you wanted to move Jace Young in a possible trade, I still think the Mariners would be a great trade partner. I don't know. They need something at second or third base. I feel like that would be perfect, right? If you wanted to go get someone, a guy that could hit, they need hitters on that team. I feel like Jace Young would be perfect. And then you go make a move, for possibly like someone like Luis Castillo, I feel like Luis Castillo would be a great addition to this pitching, to this rotation. Skubal and Castillo, right? I don't know. Something like that. We'll see. But for Gleyber, in the end, I think it's okay. It's a bat, right? They need bats at the end of the day, right? I felt like the Tigers, their offense this year was a little up and down. They need a little bit of thump, in my opinion. But, if you're looking here at Gleyber Torres, right? If we were to go to StatCast for Gleyber, if you're looking at the expected home runs here, I feel like that's not the most friendly ballpark for him. There's a bit of a pitcher-friendly park, right? So, you look here, 17 home runs this past year, goes down to 9 at Comerica. So, yeah, you're getting a decent bat, but is this really the best bat you could have gotten? I don't know, man. I don't love it. It's fine, I guess. I did see some polls out there when it came to Tigers fans reacting about it. I felt like it was 50-50 for the most part. Yes, no, right? It was pretty down the middle. I don't know. If I were a Tigers fan, I'd feel like I'd be like, okay. I don't know. Does this create more problems than solutions? That's kind of the way I think about it. I think it could be okay, but I feel like there's not much of a ceiling with this move. He's not really much of a defender. He's not really going to give you much on the base paths. I don't know. He's just a bat, but the bat doesn't fit Comerica very well. So I don't know. I just don't think there's a whole lot of ceiling here. I don't see. That's where it kind of makes me think, like, is Bregman still a big possibility here? Because I feel like you're not really improving your team's chances with this move. But at least if you do miss on Bregman, at least you did something. I feel like the best thing here would be both Torres and Bregman, if you can make that work, right? Financially, if they can pay him, then, because I don't know, it just doesn't do much for me. I feel like it's like okay. It's okay at best, in my opinion. We will see. But speaking of Alex Bregman, what's going on with him? Well, Mark Feinstein, he came out with an article. What was this? In the last couple of days. He says here, well, obviously we know that Christian Walker, he went to the Astros. They got Paredes there. So there is your first and third baseman for Houston. Alex Bregman's time in Houston is over. Now, we have other options, right? He did say here. Well, this was also before they signed Gleyber. This was today. Yeah, this was yesterday. So that is something to consider with this article. He did say the Tigers remain interested, but it is unclear whether Detroit will be willing to give Bregman the type of deal he is seeking. So again, that's kind of where the pivot part comes into play. Is this a pivot? I don't know. The Red Sox remain interested, though Bregman would have to move to second base to go to Boston unless the Sox made another move by trading Casas, which would allow them to move Devers across the diamond to first base. So that was something in Red Sox land. I'm going to talk more about that over on Fenway Faithful after this stream. Go subscribe to Fenway Faithful if you have not already. So he mentions the Tigers still. Again, this was before Gleyber. He mentions the Red Sox. Now, we had a couple of things today when it came to the Mets. Dan Bartels, I think he's just an aggregator on Twitter. I think he's just kind of one of those, he sees stuff out there and then he just puts it. I don't know. I don't know if he's actually like he work. I don't know who he is, but that's what someone told me. He's more of an aggregator. But anyway, he put this out there. The Mets offered Pete Alonso 3 years, $90 million. But Alonso is looking for 175 to 200. So why does this matter, right? Well, we had another report from John Frisella. He says here, the New York Mets are trying to figure out a way to sign Pete Alonso and Alex Bregman. The Mets are hanging back, waiting to see how the market develops, as all eyes are on starting pitchers Corbin Burnes and Roki Sasaki. He also mentions the Mets are not out on Sasaki or Burnes, so all of these decisions are interconnected. Executives are waiting for one or two price points to drop. I find this interesting. Good grief. Are the Mets really going to go out there after bringing in Soto? Come on. Are they going to really do this? Bringing in both Alonso and Bregman? That's just crazy. Could you imagine that lineup? What a lineup that would be. They would. Listen. I know the Dodgers are probably going to be the odds-on favorite, but holy cow, you would have. To be honest with you, if you did bring in Alonso and Bregman, Alonso is your DH at that point. I would go with Vientos and Bregman, and on the corners personally. I'd rather go with a combination of that, right? Alonso, the defense has not been very good at first base, so let's get him at DH. But wow, what a lineup that would be. I don't know, man. It just feels like, and again, I know the Mets have the money. I know they do, right? However, that was Juan Soto money. That's different. That's just not even the same thing. It's not. It's its own category. They can do this. I'm not saying they can't. I just wonder, Steve Cohen kind of had his sandbox moment this offseason. I feel like, okay, it's David Stern's time to do what he needs to do with the roster. Is this going to be something he's going to want to do? I feel like it's going to be one or the other, Personally, I could be very wrong. Listen, I've been wrong plenty of times. I don't mind admitting that. This just feels like too much. We'll see, though. If you were to ask me who would be more likely, I'd probably say Alonso at this point. But, again, we got this report that Alonso is looking for 175 to 200. I'll be shocked if he gets that. That just sounds like Boris asking for the moon. I don't know, man. Alonso is now 30 years old. He has DH risk. I don't know, man. You're going to have to give at least an 8-year deal, like, to get to that range. I don't think the AAV for Alonso is going to go more than 25 per year. I just feel like based off of what he's done over the last couple of years, you have seen a little bit of regression with the slash line. The defense hasn't been very good. You're not going to get speed at all with him, right? So you've seen a bit of regression when it comes to the Fangraph wins above replacement. So, to me, I think just based off of what he's done over the last few years, that AAV probably doesn't go higher than 25 per year. So I don't know, man. That just sounds like, does David Stearns want to do a long-term deal like that? Doesn't sound like it because he's offering 3 years, $90 million. So now, remember, we did just get a report not too long ago about Teoscar, right? Before he ended up taking the 3-year 66. Remember, there was a report that the Dodgers didn't want to go above 2 years. What was it? 2 years, $60 million. I think that's what the offer was at one point. So then they got it to 366. I think there might be some incentives in that. Anyway, but we did see a similar situation. Can we see maybe the Mets and Alonso meet somewhere in the middle? Listen, I'm going to say this. Let's do some math, right? 175. Let's say Pete Alonso wants a 7-year, $175 million deal. Mets are offering 3. I think probably the sweet spot, let's get a 5-year deal, right? Let's do a 5-year deal. And what would be the median there? Let's do, here we go. I got to do math in my head. Do like a 5-year 135. I feel like that would be the middle ground. Yeah, I don't know, man. I just think that's too many years they're looking for, and but I can also see from the Mets' point of view, or from Alonso's point of view too, thinking, I don't want to do 3 years. I want more than that. So I feel like in the end, the Mets will work something out with him. I don't know. We'll see. But if it does not work out, I mean, listen, Bregman, you got to remember here with free agents, every free agent has their own value, right? I mean, obviously. But, could you see the Mets go from, let's say it ends up being like 135 or whatever, right? Could they pivot to Bregman and give him, let's say, like 190? Well, you got to think yes, that would be more money, but it's a different set of values, right? Bregman is going to bring you offense and defense, right? So Bregman has been the better F-war over the last few years compared to Alonso. So he is going to be more expensive. Now it comes down to, does Stearns see that as a good buy? I don't know. I mean, if he's offering 3 years for Pete Alonso, what are the Mets wanting to do with Bregman? Again, Alonso, another advantage there is this is a guy that's a homegrown talent. Bregman is not. I don't know. I don't think there's been I don't know. I'd have to go back. I'm sure there are a couple of examples. Let me know in the chat. Has there been an example before where you have a homegrown player and he's out of your price range, and then you pivot to someone more expensive on the free agent market? I'm sure there's at least one example, but I can't think of it at the top of my head. I don't know. Let me know in the chat. I don't know if there is one. At least recently. I don't know. Fibs, 100% has happened. I feel like it has too, but I can't remember. I can't remember. Has there ever been a player or a team that has pivoted to a more expensive option over a homegrown talent. Penguin fan Matt Olson. Yeah, so that's Matt Olson got, what was that deal again? That's a good one. Matt Olson ended up getting what? A 8-year 168. So that's a $21 million AAV though. With the Dodgers, Freeman was a shorter deal, but he had the higher AAV. So yes, total contract more, but the difference was Olson was also a bit younger. So that is a little different. I see what I see what you mean though. But yeah, that's probably the closest example that I can think of. You don't usually see a pivot to someone more expensive. That's a good example, right? But there were advantages of Olson. I'm not saying Olson's the better player right now than Freddie Freeman, but younger, cheaper AAV. So, anyway, I feel like I'm rambling. But the Mets, I mean, listen, I don't know. I feel like better chance they bring back Alonso than Bregman. That's kind of where I'm at. Felt like that took 10 minutes to explain that. Sure, if it's not a pivot for Gleyber, then yeah, let's make some more room for on the Tigers, right? You figure out what to do with Jace Young. I don't know what happens with Torkelson at this point. I mean, I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I get, like, could you do a platoon? Colt Keith and Torkelson there at first base? Or could you just trade Torque? I would love Torkelson to get a chance somewhere. Pittsburgh, I feel like they could work him into the mix. The Marlins are just trying to throw everything at a wall right now. Maybe they could figure out something with him. I know it won't happen with the Phillies, but I feel like he could hit pretty well in that ballpark. The Giants, maybe you could do some kind of a platoon with Lamont Wade Jr. He did hit lefties better this year as a lefty bat instead of righties, so that was a reverse split. But if you wanted to do a lefty righty there, maybe the Giants could make some sense. I don't know. I feel like there is a home out there for Torkelson. I would like to see him try to get his career back on track. I was excited when he got drafted, man. It's sad to see what's happened with Torkelson. So anyway, but Bregman, I mean, listen, when it comes to Bregman, man, I want to say my Red Sox. I want to say that, but I want to say the Tigers. I mean, I want to say the Mets, but I feel like this is probably going to be a bit of a holding pattern here. I think it really comes down to what are the Mets going to do here with Pete. Now, I was also listening to the Section 10 podcast the other day, and or was that today? I think was that today or last night? Can't remember. But I think Jared Carrabis, he was kind of putting out there. He wasn't saying it as a fact, but it felt like he was hinting at it a little bit, saying like, who's even made Bregman an offer at this point? It's kind of the way he was saying it. He knows some people out there. He was saying, like, an offer out there for him. I think him and Bregman are buddies, right? I think they are buddies, but so I don't know. Maybe something's happening there, but it's really, I wouldn't even know who would have. Don't forget about the Blue Jays too. I know the Blue Jays, right? The Blue Jays. There is that. But again, sorry, I don't mean to forget about them. I feel like Blue Jays fans feel like I'm hating on them this entire offseason. But listen, even Jim over at Ballcap, right? Ballcap Sports, Jim, he's been saying all offseason too, do players want to come to the Blue Jays? So it's not just me. Even Jim, who is a diehard Blue Jays fan, has been saying the same thing. So I don't know, man. I don't know. Blue Jays, maybe. But I think at this point, it's probably Red Sox or Mets or Tigers. Again, I just don't know what their mindset is right now. Depends on what you think of the Gleyber move. Pivot? No, I don't know. We'll see what happens with Bregman here. But at this point, I don't know. I don't even know when something would even happen. I feel like a lot actually probably comes down to Pete Alonso. Are the Mets or do they do both? I feel like both is not going to happen. One or the other probably makes sense. But then again, you never know. Things can always get crazy. Now, moving on here. Moving on. Let's get to the Roki Sasaki latest news. Let's get to the Roki news. Not much, but John Heyman did talk about this the other day, saying that it seems like the two favorites right now are the Dodgers, followed by the Padres. He mentions that the Mets could sell their recent pitching success, the Yankees on their long history of winning. Mentions the Cubs and the Rangers, histories of success with Japanese stars, also received audiences. He says also here, one person assessed the Dodgers' chances as better than 50-50, but not 100%. Talks here, the Padres might be more apt to trade Dylan Cease if they land Sasaki. That could be interesting, right? Remember Dylan Cease? He got moved right before last season started. The Mariners haven't been able to get what they sought for Luis Castillo. Mentions that. So the Mariners have been mentioned in the Sasaki sweepstakes, but yeah, I mean, it feels kind of like right. Yeah, I mean, the Dodgers are the Padres really at this point. I love that the White Sox got a meeting over the Phillies, at least as of right now. I guess there has been another report saying, in the new year, that could be another opportunity for teams to jump into the mix to get a meeting. I guess the Red Sox don't even have a meeting at this point. The Phillies don't even have a meeting at this point. But the White Sox have a meeting. I think that's hilarious. So, I mean, listen. You know me. I'm always, never say never, right? It sounds ridiculous that he would go to the White Sox. It does. It sounds like the most, it's not happening. But what if it does? What if it does? What if he goes there? I mean, listen, I'll say this. I will say this. If he goes to the White Sox, look out for them in a couple of years when they get some of that young pitching up to the major league level and they got Roki, Noah Schultz, Hagen Smith, Drew Thorpe. I mean, Iriarte. I mean, holy cow, that's a lot of good pitching right there. They would be, they'd have a ton of pitching. Could you imagine? Wait, what a 1-2-3 that could end up being, man. Roki, Noah Schultz, and Hagen Smith. Listen, say what you will about the White Sox when it comes to what they've been doing at the major league level the last few years, but they develop pitching very well. They brought Garrett Crochet straight to the show. This guy was pitching in the postseason. They thought, yeah, this guy's good. We're going to just put him right there on the major league roster in the 2020 season, right? Dylan Cease, right? Dylan Cease. He was very good for them, right? They have done a lot with pitching over the years. White Sox, couple of years, man. If they could figure out a way to get Sasaki, that would be massive for them. Huge. But again, I do think it will come down to the Dodgers and the Padres. We'll see, though. Padres would be massive. He mentioned the Rangers here. I wouldn't count out the Rangers. I think they're a team, right? They got Yu Darvish a while back, right? They got, hey, Rangers, man, got a lot of talent there. I mean, that would be amazing if they could pick him up. Oh, can you imagine that? I mean, Jacob deGrom, Roki Sasaki. Oh, ridiculous. Kumar Rocker gets himself going. Man, oh man, that could be some good pitching in Texas. But we'll see. We'll see. I see a lot of you in the chat. Odd Villain, White Sox, they're a glorified crew. I mean, White Sox, man, I know they look ridiculous right now, but a couple years, look out. They could be pretty good. So, Mike Man 88, Roki, Kumar, Leiter for the next 6 years. Yeah, if Leiter can get himself right, too. I mean, that's a good amount of young pitching right there. We too, plus the Tigers have Maeda. I think also the Tigers today mentioned that they have not secured a meeting for Roki. I would imagine that would change. They do very well with their pitching. So then if he doesn't have a meeting with the Tigers, that kind of makes me think, what are the other factors at play? Because the Tigers did just make the postseason, right? They beat the Astros. So they got a lot of good young talent there. The Tigers, in my head, make sense for Roki. So if he doesn't even give them a meeting, I wonder why that would be. Is it just the location? Detroit? There's not really a whole lot of stuff out there. They got they got cars and farms, pretty much. So I don't know maybe that would be a reason. We'll see. But I'm excited to see, this start to pick up a little bit. And then again, the Mets, Yankees, But again, I think it'll be the Dodgers and the Padres in the end. But I would love it if you went to a small market team like the White Sox, like the Tigers, like kind of one of those, right? So we'll see. We'll see. We have a little something here on Corbin Burnes as well. Reportedly looking for $245 million. No surprise. I mean, he's looking for big money. Yeah, not really a surprise there. Corbin Burnes, right? Baseball trade values, they are projecting for 7 years a $240 million deal. So I would guess it's probably going to be, maybe is he looking for like because they are MLB trade rumors, they were comparing it to Steven Strasburg, who got $245. I think that was an 8-year deal, right? Right? Strasburg, 8-year deal. It was a 7-year deal, right? So okay. So yeah, that would make some sense right there. I'm telling you, man, for Corbin Burnes, it's so interesting how this market has developed, right? And, people were really getting on to the Max Fried signing from the Yankees. Listen, I think you could probably, at this point, considering how long Burnes has been on the market and the money that he's looking for, I think you could tip your cap to the Yankees, man. No, they ended up getting him on an 8-year deal. They were aggressive for him. Yeah, Max Fried, man. A lot of people out there preferred Max Fried over Corbin Burnes. Wanted the lefty guy, nasty curveball. Burnes expensive, man. We've seen the Giants. I thought at one point that was going to happen. Hasn't happened. Still think that makes a lot of sense. Blue Jays, of course, right? They're trying to find anyone. I think the Red Sox are probably out of it at this point. I don't know. I don't see him doing it. Unless it was some kind of a short-term deal. That's how I feel like it could end up happening, but it's probably not after bringing in Walker Buehler. Baltimore, right? Could he still just go back to Baltimore? You just brought in Sagano. So, I don't know. To me, I if I'm an Orioles fan, that drives me nuts that they haven't brought him back. Drives me nuts. And I'm going to throw a surprise team in there. I wonder if the Diamondbacks could be an option for Corbin Burnes. I wonder if it ends up being like a short-term deal. He lives in Arizona. Maybe do the same thing that Blake Snell did last offseason. Take a 3-year deal with an opt-out. He'd be close to home, right? Remember Blake Snell, West Coast guy, right? He just went to the Giants, Corbin Burnes lives in Arizona. The Diamondbacks, over the years, when you think about the way they've spent money, it's always been on pitching. Always. Every single time. Zach Greinke, Madison Bumgarner, Eduardo Rodriguez, Jordan Montgomery. They have signed guys. They have signed position players. Right? But when you think about more recently, a lot of guys like Corbin Carroll, right? Homegrown guy. Jake McCarthy, Pavin Smith. They've gotten guys in trades. Ketel Marte. Josh Naylor, obviously. Lourdes Gurriel Jr. So, they're Gabriel Moreno. So they don't, at least from the top of my head, I can't think of any big signings on the position player front when it comes to the D-backs. I always think of the pitching. That's what I always think. So again, I just think really because of the geographic location where Burnes lives, take a 3-year with an opt-out, go try the offseason next year. Blake Snell, it obviously worked for him. Burnes, man, I'm thinking, hey, comfortable year with the Diamondbacks. Maybe go after it again. Zach Gallen's going to be a free agent. So this could be like kind of in a way, like an all-in kind of a move. And you think from the Diamondbacks' point of view, if he ends up just being there for a year, the Diamondbacks are probably fine with that. I would imagine Corbin Burnes, would Burnes end up having a Jordan Montgomery kind of a year? Probably not. I would like to think that doesn't happen. But that could be a really good move if they came out of nowhere like they did last year for Jordan Montgomery. No one saw that one coming. That was ridiculous. Like that just happened out of left field. Who knows? Maybe it ends up happening here. Could you see the Mets maybe get involved? I mean, listen, I liked the move of bringing back Sean Manaea. We haven't talked about that. I love that. I was saying from the get-go, I felt like the Mets needed to add a dependable guy to the rotation. They needed that. Manaea has been a very steady guy over the years, right? Obviously very good this past year, over 180 innings, solid. Love that. Love that. I had mentioned, maybe guys like Nick Pivetta, a guy that's been steady over the years, but Manaea, you just saw what he did this past year. Yeah, makes a ton of sense to bring him back. But at this point, could the Mets maybe get involved? I feel like, I don't know. It just feels like you got too many guys at this point. I mean, you'd have Burnes, Manaea, Senga. You just brought in Montas. I mean, I would think Clay Holmes, he's going to the bullpen if you bring in Burnes. So we'll see. Maybe the Mets could get involved. If I'm thinking of some other teams that maybe could throw like the Blake Snell 3-year opt-out deal. I don't know. Remember the Astros? They paid attention to that last year, right? They were at one point, it looked like they showed a lot of interest in Blake Snell. Could Houston maybe bite at something there? Maybe the Angels, same thing. 3-year opt-out. Maybe the Angels could do. I mean, Artie Moreno doesn't like the long-term deals. Maybe that could be something. Go to the Angels for a year. See what you can do. Dodgers. And why not? You can never count out the Dodgers. Never. So I don't know. Corbin Burnes. It's going to be interesting. But everyone, I am going to wrap things up there, I think. I think that's pretty much all we got here for tonight. And again, the big story, Teoscar going back to the Dodgers. Again, I'll say it's a great move, I think, right? Don't fix what's not broke. I mean, it was a great situation for everyone involved. The fan base loves him. He did great. Good chemistry. Why mess it up? Why mess it up? Bregman, again, I'm still just on the fence with the Tigers, man. I'm still on the fence. I don't know if this is a pivot. It feels like a pivot, but maybe it might not be. Again, you'd have to be moving some stuff around. You'd have to figure out what to do with Jace Young. Trey Sweeney as well. There's young guys. Yes, Bregman would be better, but you got to think about the development of those guys too. I still think the Tigers could be an option here. Again, I don't know if this is a pivot or if that was more of an insurance move. So we'll see. Could the Red Sox or the Mets step up their efforts for Bregman now? We'll see. Especially the Mets, man. The Mets are really interesting. Alonso, I'm going to be thinking here, he's probably going back, right? I think they just got to find a middle ground and come to terms. I'm going to say it ends up being like a 5-year deal for Alonso. I just feel like it makes too much sense. You need that power bat. If they bring back Alonso, again, it just feels like a lot of money. I think if they brought back Alonso on a short-term deal, then you could probably do Bregman. But I don't know, man. If you're doing Alonso at 5, Bregman at 7, sounds a little much. Sounds a little much, if you ask me. Roki, nothing crazy. Corbin Burnes wants a lot of money. It's pretty much all we got tonight, ladies and gentlemen. But everyone, if you can, on the way out, hit that like button for me. Probably not going to be back here tomorrow unless something happens. We'll see. Sunday night, we're always live on Sunday nights in the off season, so we'll definitely be back then. But be on the lookout tomorrow in case anything happens. But everyone, go have yourself a great rest of your night. Go eat the rest of your Christmas cookies. I know there's still some out there for you. I actually had some leftovers today. I had some Christmas cookies left over, and I saw those, and I was like, ooh, I need those. So they're all gone now. So I think I've officially moved on from all the Christmas food. But everyone, go have yourself a good rest of your night. If you can on the way out, hit that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll talk to you next time. Oh, and head on over to Fenway Faithful.